Welcome, everyone. Today we have with us Lalita Murthy. She's a business English consultant and trainer working to improve business communication of employees in large organizations. She's been a teacher for 20 years before she moved to training in 2002. Since then, she has created customized solutions to communication problems faced by employees, especially by IT engineers. She's also a business English trainer for the Beck suite of examinations offered by the University of Cambridge. She's also worked with the CSR department of some organizations, creating courses in business communication that prepare students at colleges in rural areas to adapt easily to the global workplace. She has presented at many conferences, both in India and other places across the globe. She has been a member of the IATEFL, BESIG, the International Association for Teachers of English as a Foreign Language, Business English Special Interest Group since 2005. She's also the convener of Business English Special Interest Group of ELTI, that is English Language Association of India. So over to you, ma'am. Thank you so much for being out here today.
It's my pleasure, Shweta. I love to talk to people and definitely you. So, so
Thank you
that's
so
fine.
much. Thank you so much, Lalita, ma'am. I'm quite honored for you to be a part of my show. So, without further ado, let's get started. To set the context, you started your career as a teacher and then married an army officer, and where you traveled to a new place every 2 years. And in our previous conversations, you have mentioned that the career choices that you took were more by accident than planning. Could you please elaborate on that?
Actually, I started my teaching career after I got married. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Probably immediately after my post graduation, within 6 months, while I was getting a job as a lecturer in the university, um, I got engaged and I got engaged to an army officer.
Wow.
So even then, I knew that we would be traveling quite a bit. And in those days, careers where women were very limited.
Mm-hmm.
And almost all our postings, his postings have been in small towns.
Right.
And we have never stayed in any town for more than 2.5, 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So the only career which I could actually pursue, though in fits and starts, were teaching
Right.
and teaching in schools because not every place had a
Mm-hmm.
college. For
Mm-hmm.
example, we were in a place called Aknur, where the nearest college was in Jammu. We'd have to travel quite a bit. Therefore, I took up, but I love teaching.
Right.
It's not that because I had nothing else, took up teaching. I love teaching and I enjoy interacting with people and children, actually, young adults. I've never enjoyed teaching smaller children, but I enjoy interacting with young adults. It's always, even now. And because I think mentally you remain young when you keep interacting with young people, especially those with whom you can talk, have a rational conversation. And that's how I started. But my husband retired in 97 and we
Mm-hmm.
took up a job in TCS, Tata Consultancy Services, as head of admin.
Wow.
98 he joined, 98, 99. And he had actually, that was the time when the Cambridge School suite of exams had just, Cambridge University had just introduced their Beck exams in India. And he had got the admin staff to do a Beck hire.
Mm.
And he came and told me, see, your English is so much better than all those people. Why don't you do this? And I just by chance, I took up the training for Beck. And later on, I was working for a company which had a mandate to do English training, which suddenly got, it was actually a company doing um, video lessons for school children, but they got a project for doing English business communication with Infosys,
Mm-hmm.
which I designed that course of 14 hours, and two
Wow.
of us did that.
Mm-hmm.
And Mrs. Ramadurai met me once and she said, why don't you do for TCS? And that's how I joined TCS. I hadn't actually um, applied for a job in TCS. But having said that, I think that was the biggest turning point in my life because working with TCS, I started in 2003. The kind of freedom we had to experiment and do. And we were, I was really allowed a lot of leeway. If I wanted to do something, it was approved very easily. At that time, TCS was very small, 2,000 people in Bangalore. But I got so much support from the top management that I don't think I have grown that much in those 13 years I was in TCS as I have grown in all my years in my life. So the
Wow.
13 years on TCS was such a turning point and such a learning experience. That's why I realized that you should jump in if you get an opportunity, and that was an opportunity which I just grabbed. And I should, till today, I thank all the top brass in TCS for what I am.
Wow, that's wonderful, ma'am. Well, I have a follow up question to that. Was it a challenge to shift from teaching a predefined syllabus and to come up with your own training module when you were a trainer?
Actually, in the beginning, I didn't realize that it'll be so much of a challenge. What happened was, uh, when I started out in 2002, we thought that, okay, good communication is possible if you speak good language. Language skills are really a prerequisite to good communication skills. I realized I learned so much from my participants because many of them, some of them had very good English. I remember one person, I've forgotten his name, telling me that his English is quite good, but he doesn't know how to start a conversation with a client. He says, "What do I say? What do I talk?" It was at that time I realized that communicating for business, you should know not just English, but you should also have a knowledge of business. You should have knowledge of what each culture requires, because certain cultures, certain opening sentences are not permitted. For example, you may be fond of cricket, but you just can't go and talk about cricket to an American. He has absolutely no clue. Well, a British client may be happy to discuss with you the ashes and things like that. So to understand the audience and create a course is what I learned, that
Hmm.
two things are very important when you create a course. One, you understand the purpose of the course.
Right.
Why are you actually conducting the course?
Hmm.
Are you conducting them so that they become better in English? Or are you creating the course so that they can interact better with their international clients? So the purpose and the audience are two very important challenges when you create and customize a course. So these are the first two things. Now, whenever I create a course, I always ask myself, why and who first? Why am I creating this course? What is the objective? What does the company require from this course? What do the participants require? Is the perceived need of the participants same as their actual need? If, like, for example, some participants may think, I really don't need sessions in English, but they are not aware of the differences in their use of language, politeness, culture, etc. So they probably, that would help. So a perceived need, actual need, demands of the job, demands of their particular role, all this comes into when you're customizing a course. You need to look into what they need, and you know what they are, what they need, and fill the gap.
Right.
The
Right.
basic course creation is what they are,
Hmm.
what they need, and
Yes.
filling the gap, moving from what they are to what they
Yes.
need. For some, and another big challenge in when you create a course structure is the level of the participants are always very different, even if their level of language is the same. For example, if you have a class with freshers and with people with, say, 10 years experience, it's going to be a very big challenge, because the freshers are really not aware of the challenges which a business person faces. By the time you do about 5 years in your IT company, then you are very clear on what all you don't know, while a fresher is not clear on what he doesn't know. So even if you teach something, he may not really absorb it. While a 5 year old, a person with 5 years experience, understands the challenges, and he can take, you can get maximum out of that course. Having said that, when you're creating a course only for freshers,
Hmm.
then your focus will be slightly different. So that's why today I did a recently a course for on business writing for students of a management school.
Hmm.
Now, 90% of them are not trainer, have never worked, have no work experience. So to imagine that a business email can cause problems is beyond them.
Hmm.
They really cannot imagine how. You only think from yourself. To teach your student participants on thinking of the audience before they write. Thinking
Mm-hmm.
of the audience before they speak is something which I think I need to do with every course I do. Does that explain? So this is how I go about. I see what they need, what they do, because all business communication mainly covers three areas: presentations,
Right.
meetings, negotiations.
Yes.
Introductions and greetings, that is for the very basic people, like very junior people. Introductions and greetings they may require. Otherwise, how do you present yourself orally, with or without a PPT? So presentations, then you have to tell them how to conduct themselves in meetings, how do you talk, how do you interrupt, etc. Then
Right.
how do you negotiate? That you
Hmm.
can't really break a trust. When you negotiate, you have to be very careful not to hurt the other person, think of the feelings of the people. And
Right.
finally, of course, writing, where you need to be really, really clear. Clarity in writing is something I emphasize.
Hmm. I mean, thank you so much for that, ma'am. I think we have got, I mean, there were, I mean, for me as well, I mean, there's sufficient key learnings, that goes with the business communication. We might think, communication, as you mentioned, is just about, if I know how to talk, then probably, I can go ahead with it. But then I think there's so much more into it, as you mentioned, that you should know whom you're talking to and the way you present yourself. Be it in written or your body language, and of course while negotiating with clients and in a business perspective, I think it's very very much needed. So moving on to the next question, as you mentioned, I mean, people are at different levels. One could be a beginner and the other person could be, an experienced person. So that leads me to the question of how do you go about preparing a course structure, keeping these points in mind?
I This is basically, as I told you, it is moving from where you are. You first you do a diagnostic test or a needs analysis. Earlier we used to do a diagnostic test, but now I realize when you do a diagnostic test, the participants feel that they are being tested and they really don't like it. So now the recent last 1.5 years have stopped giving a diagnostic test.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, what I do instead is I give them I have a first one-on-one with the HR or the training manager of that company. Then I have one-on-one with the project manager who has asked for the course, what he wants expects from his students. Then and then with them we discuss on what we are planning to achieve by the end of a course, because you see, you can very often, some people want a short course of 15-20 hours, or even a short course of 1 or 2 days.
Right.
Language and communication is a skill. It doesn't have certain principles which you can teach and then they learn the principles and they become good communicators. It's not that easy. They need to practice. Therefore we talk to them, and I decide on the key issues they want to address. Then I prepare a needs analysis. The needs analysis is based on what the CEFR scales, it's a Council of Europe framework of reference, has scales of language learning. Based on these scales, they have what they call can do statements. At
Mm-hmm.
each level, a person can do something. So we drop a needs analysis based that I can do, he can do this, he can do that, and I take about 20 of them, decide. I sent about 50 and I ask the training manager and the head of the project to narrow it down to 20 of what they want to address. He's able to write clearly, he's able to talk politely, whatever he can do. So the 15 can do statements taken from the CEFR new manual, I 50 of them I put 20 of them I put it in a Excel sheet and I ask participants to answer yes or no, because then they should feel that they need it. It's not that I feel or the manager feels that he needs it. The participant should have some stake in that. They should say that, yes, I need this, instead of saying a diagnostic set and say, you need this. That is like a school teacher. So once they recognize what they need, then I see which most of them need. If there are 20 participants in the class, I don't take more than 20 in any sessions I do.
Mm-hmm.
Then whatever most of them want definitely be addressed, and what's the manager wants, I sneak in in the course structure.
Okay.
Because sometimes, it may be just as an exercise. When, for example, pronunciation, many people don't think they need to change. Indians especially think that they don't need to change their
Yes.
pronunciation. So what I do, I have whenever I have a speaking class or a speaking session, I tell them that how to be articulate and clear when they speak. It need not be. And if there are any words which are badly pronounced so that you can't understand the meaning, then I call the participant separately and tell him it would help you if you could do this.
Right.
But not in front of the whole class, so that
Hmm.
I don't
Hmm.
want people to feel small. Especially Indians are very sensitive and touchy about this. But by and large, I have found that the participants who attend my classes have been very happy with the class and they wanted more. So I've never faced a problem of poor feedback. So that's a different story.
Wow.
So
All right.
I hope
Um,
that's clear.
yes, yes. So, yeah, so that's about, how to go about preparing a course structure, and you have given much insight into that. So moving on, well, I mean, you have been a business English trainer, a soft skills trainer, and a freelance consultant. So you do stress upon professional style of communication. So in that context, I would like to know, what is your take on social media platforms? Have they skewed communication in any way? I mean, as it sounds casual, as they're on social media platforms, or are they an important medium in today's virtual businesses? What is your take on that?
Actually, social media is a tool. You use the tool for certain things. For example, you want to be seen professionally, you're on LinkedIn and your LinkedIn page. You want to do something socially or on Facebook. If you want to say about anything, short snippets on Twitter. If you have a lot of visual presentation, so each of the social media platforms are a tool to use. I think all businesses use the platform. They all have their own take on how they were going to use the social media platforms. So all social media platforms are used. However, in today's businesses, there's more casual style coming into being. You're no longer a formal style of communication is no longer expected. In fact, the simpler and easier to learn language is what has always been prescribed. But now they're even less formal. It doesn't really matter whether you call a person dear Mr. So and so or hi Lalita or dear Mrs. Murthy. It really doesn't matter
Mhm.
if the message is clear, short, and crisp. Now, you WhatsApp and other platforms, or even chat, any of the chat, instant messaging platforms, are okay for confirming, oh, will you be available for the meeting tomorrow? Yes or no? Or can you just send this to me by tomorrow? I mean, I really cannot proceed. Any short messages is fine.
Mhm.
But anything which impacts business has always been in the written form, whether we like it or not. Simple things like even with you, I chat with you a lot of times, sometimes on social media. But if you want me to, when you wanted me to do this, you send me a formal email with the
Yes.
do's and don'ts. So a formal email of what is expected by the engineers or by the employees is expected even with the client. You cannot say I sent you a WhatsApp message that I'll send you tomorrow and I forgot about it.
Right.
If even if he sends a WhatsApp message, he has to follow. But email is important. For WhatsApp message is okay. I've sent you something on your email. Please look. That's fine for a what is submitted, but the main body of the message has to come in writing.
Mhm.
And surprisingly, this was what was told by somebody I know who works in Amazon US. She says Amazon
Mhm.
has stopped presentations at PPTs. What they do when they have a meeting is they send a written document in advance on what they're going to discuss.
Okay.
You're all supposed to have read the written documents, come to the meeting, and discuss what you're going to do.
Hmm.
There's no presentation where you have to see this and then it's always writing. So at the end of the meeting, you sum up on what was discussed and send to each person what they were to do. So there's no PPT, there is no PPT ever, and there are discussions, but based on a particular Word document. I think this is very true of American cultures, which want everything in black and white and
Mm.
decided, where writing is task based cultures. Maybe in India, which is a relationship based cultures, things may be different in some Indian companies. But if you are using virtual platforms,
Mhm.
you need to be more task based.
Right.
For example, you need to, if you're using a virtual platform for meeting, you're using a virtual platform for anything, you have to have things in writing, and which is actually a proof of that thing that it existed. Nobody can, once you send an email, it's a proof
Right.
that you've sent it on the date, time, everything is there. It is present in the cloud. People can't remove. So I think that kind of reiteration of liability, I mean, saying that you got to do this kind of, will not go in businesses. In
Hmm.
olden days, it used to be on paper. Contracts used to be on paper.
Yeah.
So, however much your relationship oriented culture, where work is concerned, I think we will go back to some kind of a writing.
Right.
Professional virtue of communication will not go. It may be through virtual mediums,
Right.
but communication would be required in writing.
Yes. Yes.
I thought that makes it clear, I hope.
Yes, ma'am. And I so agree with that because when you say, because I worked in a couple of startups and, where they had the informal way of communicating, as you mentioned, over WhatsApp. And I mean, as you said, I mean, if it's a very casual thing or you're checking up on someone, then yes, a WhatsApp does work. But then if it's something where, it's a very important piece of communication which you want to put out to everyone, and that cannot happen over a WhatsApp. So I totally agree with you on what you say that, written communication is here to stay. And it's also more so on a very, with a business perspective in mind.
Thank
Um,
you.
so, moving on, you have traveled to many places. I know we have had conversations on that, and you were a part of many conferences. But I've heard you talk. I mean, even now that you mentioned that communication isn't about language and writing skills, and there's more to it, and culture does come into the picture. So, does communication and culture work in sync? Could you share your experiences?
Absolutely. You can see communication, like I always say, it's not about it's not just transactional. It's not that I want some information, you have given me an information. I have complained, you have apologized. It's not a transaction. It is highly interactional because communication touches the feelings of people. It doesn't just tell you what to do, what not to do, what is right, what is wrong. Therefore, in both writing and speaking, you need to know, you should be clear not to offend the person whom you're talking to. See, certain words, certain things may offend. My first experience in this was in TCS, I think in 2004, sometime as early as that. I was working for one of the projects where the project manager came and said that he had got an email from his client saying it's a shame that you he had played, he had put something in, I mean, I think he had sent something on time or whatever. He said, she has said good, and below that she has written, it's a shame that you had to miss your SLA due to no fault of your own. Now,
Mm,
it's a shame, in Hindi, roughly translated, it says sharam ki baat hai.
mm,
So
mm,
what happens, it's a shame means how unfortunate.
mm.
In English, it's a shame is the idiom which means how unfortunate. But this person interpreted it as it is something to be ashamed of.
Mm,
Literally translated in Hindi. So the complete meaning changes. The
right.
meaning of it's a shame is as being unfortunate is different if you say you have done something wrong to be shameful about. So he just deleted. He says, I don't want to share that with everybody. Then I had to explain to him, no, no, it's a shame means it's unfortunate. It's no fault of your own, of you. So these kind of language, first idiomatic usage or even simple idioms, people can misunderstand.
Mm,
Sometimes when you don't say anything, you say yes, even a word yes may sound as if you're saying reluctantly agreeing to something. So this I personally learned when you, even a simple thing like going to a Starbucks in US, when they asked me, do you want milk with your coffee? I said yes. Then my daughter piped in and said, yes, please. Because we don't add yes, please. We just say yes or no, because that's all. I mean, we don't think it's rude. But the person listening to you, if he's from another culture, may find what you say rude. So,
mm.
politeness and how politeness is interpreted in different cultures itself is a study.
Right.
So, language, especially in virtual communication, you have to be more explicit and you have to be careful, more careful about what you say so that you don't offend the other person and then he doesn't do what you want him to do. A
Mm.
client or anybody. If you have to get something done from people, you need to be learn to be polite and in the way they understand politeness,
Hmm.
not in the way that you understand politeness.
Right.
So it culture does definitely play an important part in communication, especially now when it's very especially now when we are only doing virtual communication. So this reminds me of one particular sentence which I shared.
Hmm.
um, I used to go to travel to ITPL through the bus, with using that Volvo buses. They had just
Right.
come at that time, and mine is almost a start point, so I would get a seat to sit down. And similarly, getting back also, I'd get a seat so that I and get off. So one day while I was going to office, I remember somewhere near Kundanahalli, one or two shops short of where I was getting now, a lady, a foreigner, I think she was British.
Hmm.
She climbed in with a heavy laptop bag. And she says, and I asked her, would you like me to help you with the bag? Shall I carry it? She said, no, no, thank you very much. It's very light. Obviously, it wasn't light. I realized she was being polite and I kept quiet. And the same week, I was returning one day when I saw a young Indian girl pregnant, fully pregnant, carrying a heavy bag.
Mm.
I asked her the same question. May I carry her? Shall I carry your bag? She said, oh no, it's very heavy.
Mm.
Now, the same question but different answers. One culture looks at it as, I don't want to trouble you. The British people look from their point of view, I don't want to trouble you.
Mm.
But the Indian culture, that girl was looking up from my point of view. She was looking at it from my side, thinking, oh, this is an older lady. How can I make her carry such a heavy bag? So the thing is, culture definitely has plays a part in interpreting the way language is used. So awareness of cultural differences is a big help, though unconsciously all the time we don't. Since we belong to one particular culture, all of us, we've had our
Mhm.
own culture. It's so difficult to get rid of that and look at it from another person's point of view. It has to be a um, studied effort. You have to make an effort to look at it from, and that happens the more and more you are exposed to another culture, you live abroad, you
Mhm.
learn to
Mhm.
understand these differences.
Mhm.
I hope that's clear.
Yes, yes, it is. Well, I have a follow-up question to that.
Mhm.
So when you say, I mean, of course, there are participants from various cultures. So then, how do you go about customizing a module for them? So how does that happen?
You see, I have had one very staunch experience where half of them were from one culture, the other half were the other. Generally, we have one or two people,
Mm-hmm.
when we may have one or two from a different culture.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, it's easy to ask the person to share their examples. For example, you have somebody, I remember this also, one girl from Brazil had come and she was 30, 31. I've forgotten her name, Eliza or something. And while I was doing a British English class, she said, I said, Indians generally ask personal questions, but and of family, the many cultures don't like it. For example, this girl, she said there was this girl who asked me, an Indian girl who asked me, are you married? And I said, no. She said, oh. Then I asked her, are you married? And she said, yes. Then I said, oh, married so young. So it was a very interesting story because I could realize that that girl definitely did not think it was anything of someone else's business to know whether she was married or not. But
Yeah.
Indians, we really don't mind. We don't mind asking, are you married? Do you have children?
Right.
How much do you earn? All these. Now people are getting a little more wise, or I would say little more careful. But it was not considered something wrong.
Mm.
Even today, I'm sure many of the young people must be getting these parents must be getting these questions. Why is your son not married? Why is your daughter not married? As if it's a great crime. So I mean, this is culture. So culture and communication is really very, very interesting. You have some fantastic stories, and there's so many things which you can share. But especially this one particular class I had, where half were Dutch and half were Indian.
Mm.
That was really interesting.
Mhm.
And I created questions where there would be a lot of interaction so that people learn from each other. You see, in a class, it's only very little a person learns from the trainer. A
Mhm.
lot of people is all of learning is due to peer learning, peer influences.
Absolutely.
So when you are taking a class of mixed cultures, it is a challenge preparing, but you just have to keep both the things in mind, a kind of a proportion.
Mhm.
But if it's a predominantly Indian group, then you, but when you travel for a conference and there you find so many different kinds of people, since the culture is generally trainers when I go for conferences, or generally their professional culture comes to play.
Hmm.
It's like if you're taking a group of IT engineers, they all have the same culture. If you're taking a group of business English trainers, their professional culture overrides their personal culture,
Right.
organizational culture otherwise.
Yes. So the cultures are not just geographic. It's also
Not geographic culture alone. You have, each one has a national geographic culture, you have your professional culture, you have your gender, sometimes biases and things like that. So there are a lot of other organizational cultures which you follow when you're working in an organization. So there's an interplay of individual as well as national cultures in every situation.
Hmm. Wow. I mean, I'm so thankful that you shared all the instances, very interesting instances, and that's really nice to hear. And the way you have dealt with it, I think that's commendable. So moving on, well, this gets me to the question of the scenario that we're in. What do you think about being a business English trainer and consultant during this pandemic? Do you think there are more opportunities which one can explore, considering crisp communication is vital for any business today?
I think it's true that this pandemic has really taken people, everything out of gear. People have all moved out of their comfort zones. The thing is, what I find about the thing is, you really cannot plan anything.
Mhm.
But Christmas, it definitely has brought about that crisp communication is very, very important for business today. Whether it's a meeting or whether it's in writing, whatever it is, whoever it is, they have to have crisp communication. But having said that, this is again cultural. Indians never had a personal time and work time. The blur, they could always, there was no strong division. This is my personal time, this is my work
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
And but it was not as bad as it is today. Today, there's no personal time at all. Since all of you are working from home, there is a total mix up of your personal time and your professional time, which is very, very difficult. That is more difficult to handle than for them to handle any communication problems.
Right.
Because I think all of them, people are coping the way they want, and they realize that written crisp communication is important. But looking at a screen for so many hours, I really feel sorry for the present generation which has to work. But as a freelance trainer, I can choose how many hours I'll be in front of a TV.
Right.
And that also you have to decide on how many hours are the people are really keen to do any learning,
Mhm.
webinar over face to face learning.
Mhm.
Um, yes, some people find it interesting. It depends on their age also. The younger people are, they don't mind. It's also the need. How many of them think a need for good communication now? So
Right.
I suppose it is crisp communication is definitely vital in a virtual business. There is no doubt about it. The crisper your communication, it'll be much better. But training, ca- uh, giving time for training may be much lesser in today's pandemic times. People may not like to go into another virtual training now after their virtual experiences of office spaces.
Right.
May much lesser, I feel.
Mhm.
So I don't know. There are trainers who work full time. There are trainers who still conduct classes. But
Yes.
I was never that kind of a person. I was always the person who did amount of work which she wanted to do. I always set the parameters of how much I'm going to work.
Right.
So it's not. So for me, it hasn't really. Though I do training even now.
Mhm.
That's what my husband complains. I do. I'm in front of the computer at least 1 hour a day, on an average of 1 hour a day. So we do training, but That's fine. That's life, I suppose. And crisp communication is definitely important.
Right.
And we can never plan anything, which I'm, during the not plan long term during a pandemic.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's the beauty of being a freelancer or a consultant, because you get to choose your time and your projects and the amount of time that you want to put in. So I think that's a beauty in it. Right. So that leads me to the question of what are your current projects and what are the plans for the future? What do you have in store for all of us?
Actually, right now, I'm doing a lot of free webinars for teachers.
Mhm,
Whenever I take a webinar for teachers or even for rural students or rural women or whatever, whenever I do a free webinar for rural participants or for teachers, I really don't charge anything because I think teachers are really very badly. I mean,
mhm,
they've had a very tough time during this pandemic because many of them are not used to virtual training and they have to learn all this technology first, and then they have to make sure that the children do that much study something. You may have to encourage the children, and it's so difficult even for parents to make kids sit in front. So anyway, I've been doing some free webinars for teachers,
mhm,
and apart from that, I'm my personal growth, I'm writing. I've realized I never used to write so much when I was training, but now I realize that writing is such a pleasure. So I've started writing. I write a book. I started my website and I wrote things on my website. I plan to I write at least about an hour a day. So it
mhm.
comes to around 500, 5 or 6 days, 5, 6 hours a week. I do a lot of writing and
Right.
I'm catching up on a lot of reading. Plans for the future? Yes. I really don't believe in planning during the pandemic, but I'm sure there will be a time when we'll say end to the pandemic. I'll deal with things as they come. I'm generally a person who deals with things as they come. So I'm not really worried. But what I'm doing with a friend of mine is we are in India, we have associations for so many things, and so many business communication trainers are not language qualified.
Mhm,
Not all language teachers are qualified to teach business because in business, you need to know both business and the language. So, both.
mhm,
So, business communication, we are starting a group called Dolon Gupta and I, called Business Communication Facilitate BCFAI, Business Communication Facilitators Association of India,
okay. Okay.
to bring together all business communication trainers so that they can benefit for their mutual benefit. You can exchange of ideas, exchange of work. And we had earlier planned to have a conference, but right now the conference may be postponed till the pandemic is over.
Mhm,
Introduce, learn from international trainers as well as Indian trainers. Both, everybody would have a chance to interact with each other, learn from each other, get a common platform for discussion of all topics and
mm,
so this is what we are doing. We just opened a LinkedIn page. We'll be opening a website. Our website will be ready soon, and then we have members, and then we plan to launch it in say about 1.5, 2 months, 3 months. If it's not face to face, it's going to be a web Zoom call or whatever.
right.
We are still deciding on how to launch it, but it will definitely get launched. But we are planning to bring, because in India there are 125, I think, million people who speak English,
Mm,
who have some knowledge of English. But there are still, that means only that's only about 1 or 2% of the population. There's still
right.
about 90%. Out of the 90%, at least 50% want to learn English.
Mm,
So we have all kinds of trainers. We have trainers who are in schools, training in colleges, preparing for exams. But there is no platform where all of them at least share ideas. We do have English language teachers, LTI, which does what language teaching in India, English language teaching in India, mainly professors and school teachers, whose focus is very different.
mm.
But the focus of a business communication training is very different. And so that's what we are planning to do. That is my present plan or the plan for the future.
Okay.
Work wise, yes, as and when anybody asks, I will go whole hog once the pandemic is over because now even we have to be careful.
Right.
Oh.
But I mean, with respect to your association, I think it's very interesting, and I am excited. I'm sure many of the trainers out there, I'm sure they would love to join the association once you launch it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right. Well, coming to the softer aspects, but of course, the important aspect as well. So during this time, I mean, especially this pandemic, well-being is of utmost importance, and I think that's what we spoke about as well. So, what is your workout routine like, and what do you indulge in apart from work?
Actually, I never, have all my life done some exercise or the other. I remember starting when I was 20, so many years ago.
Hmm.
I used to do the Jane Fonda's complete workout. Then I did a yoga course. In 84, I started and learned yoga. So what do I do these days? I love cooking. I know it sounds terrible, but then I am one of those old fashioned people who like cooking. And we like three different meals. We don't eat the same thing for breakfast, lunch, dinner. We like to
Wow.
have a separate breakfast, separate lunch, separate dinner. And the challenge these days, I've been cooking so little that the food doesn't go waste. Because
Mm,
now can't really share it with anybody else. I mean, earlier
right.
somebody or the other. So one thing is I do some cooking, and then when you buy things nowadays, the
Mm,
whole regime of cleaning it, putting it in, and drying out the veggies, all that take a lot of time.
yes.
Cooking, I'm fond of sewing, so
Mm.
some odd thing I keep stitching. I love reading storybooks. I definitely have at least one or two books with me all the time. And the latest is today's. What I've got is Jeffrey Archer's Hidden in Plain Sight.
Oh
I
wow.
have Evening and a Morning by Ken Follett. These are my light reading. I have heavier reading, culture map, all kinds of things. I've got at least 10 books, 4 or 5 books, which I can read at a time. Apart
Wonderful.
from the workout, I go for a walk every day, 20 minutes. Though we are not allowed to step out of the gate, but within the compound, I can walk for 40 minutes, 30, 40 minutes. And I have yoga. I do yoga at least 3 to 4 times a week. So that's what keeps me. And I am a very staunch believer in prayer. So every morning I have a regime where I do about half an hour, 40 minutes of prayer. So my life is a sort of regimented or disciplined. Once I get up at about 6 in the morning, I go to bed at 10. Watching TV, I don't mind. I like watching either one odd serial or one odd Netflix, some movie, something, but not more than 1.5 hours. I really cannot watch TV for very long. Max is 2 hours a movie.
Hmm.
Some cricket these days, but generally I just relax. I don't feel tired and I don't feel depressed or anything. I'm a very happy person. Very happy in myself. I think we should be thankful for what all we have. Fairly good health, enough insurance, and enough money to live well. So I don't think I've. I have always been a happy person, so I've not had so far any major problem with this. Only thing is, I stop. Well, I miss my walks. I used to go out of the house, but now I do inside the house. I time it half an hour, 40 minutes. I walk on the garden or upstairs in the terrace. I take a walk. But that's all. I don't step out of the house. And I miss seeing people. And I have realized that you really don't need so many clothes which you have.
I agree.
So it's fine. A lot of realization, but it's been good fun. And I'm thankful, and I've been trying to help people who really need, like my servant. And I used to have a girl, her children's education and all that, because I have someone to come and help me outside the house. Otherwise, it's okay. So this is what I do. I read a lot. I watch TV. Nothing very interesting, and of course, writing. That 1 hour of writing keeps me going every day.
That's wonderful, ma'am. I mean, it's nice to know that you're engaged with something or the other throughout the day. I think that's good to know. That's wonderful. So we come to the end of our episode, and so there's this section which I call it as the pruner spotlight section. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. It can be on the personal level or the professional level. So you can answer to me either in a word, couple of words, or a sentence or two. It's left up to you.
Fine.
Okay, so let's get
Yeah, yeah.
started.
Yes, yes. Go ahead.
All right. What is the one thing that motivates you to go about every day?
Believe in myself,
Okay. Okay.
and
Wonderful.
I could say actually being thankful for
Hmm.
what we have.
Hmm. Okay. All right. My second question is, which is your favorite book or which book inspires you? It can be your favorite or an inspirational one.
See, there are a lot of books which have at different times of my life, different stages in my life. I've read a number of books which have inspired me, but that one book which still inspires me, which have is called Markings. It's Markings by Dag Hammarskjöld. Book was published. I think I got the book in 1974 as a birthday gift.
Wow.
But that is writings by Dag Hammarskjöld, who is was the second UN Secretary General. He was a stock Swede, I think. Yeah, very short snippets to sayings which that book really has had a greater impact on me than any other book.
Hmm.
Apart from that, I also like the books among the books which I read and I really liked was The Difficulty of Being Good by Gurcharan Das.
Hmm.
That also is a take on Mahabharata and how it's a very interesting book. So actually, if you look at it at everything, I have some book or the other which I have liked. Culture, among all the culture books, I really liked a book called Culturally Speaking by Helen Spencer Oti, which was actually a take on culture. So
Mhm.
I think I've read so much that it's not fair to say fiction this way, non-fiction this way. A lot of books. And those days, Ayn Rand, and then Solzhenitsyn. Nowadays, Jeffrey Archer, Ken Follett. I like the Ken Follett's World Without End. It's also a very good book. So a
Hmm.
lot of books, fiction, non-fiction. I read a lot, but Dag Hammarskjöld till today is my favorite.
Wonderful. I'll be sure to read it as well. Right. So moving on, what is your ikigai? So ikigai is the reason for your being. What is the one thing that you do no matter what is happening around the world? Something that you enjoy doing no matter what. What could it be?
I think reading a book.
Okay. Okay.
Wherever I am, I do reading, and second would be prayer. Some prayer every morning.
Hmm. All right.
Irrespective of where I am in the world, some reading and some praying I do every day.
Okay. Perfect. Could you name one person you look up to? It could be on a personal level or a professional level, who has helped you on your journey as a consultant, as a business English trainer, anyone.
In my work,
Yeah.
I really am finding it difficult now to. mm, mm, I wouldn't say one person, but
Hmm.
apart from TCS, IFTL BISIC, and the people there have helped me to grow. Personal level, my husband has been always very encouraging of whatever I do. So
Yes.
I don't think, I mean, that sounds very cliched, but it's a fact. He has always encouraged whatever I have done, and I don't think of anyone else who's encouraged me more
Hmm.
in what I do. But apart from that, work wise, I really can't say that one person I'm very, it sounds so, what would I say, uh, bombastic, or it sounds so arrogant to say that nobody else. I am very happy with myself, kind of a thing.
Well, that's fine.
But
I think we have, I said personal or professional, so I think you gave the
it's
answer
okay.
already.
Okay, thank God. Though I don't share anything professional with him. This is personally whatever I've achieved. He has always been a person who he's encouraged what I did, and he has been like, I am very shy of pushing myself forward, but he's always been very proud of my achievements, and always
Hmm.
he's never felt ever threatened by what I've won or got. He's been very helpful, and he has been really, and my
Wonderful.
children also, but in a lesser, I wouldn't say inspiration, but they have also been always supportive.
Hmm.
In fact, the word I would use is supportive. They've all
Right.
been, my family has been very supportive
Right.
of whatever I
Okay. All right. Any productivity tips to our listeners?
tips.
Yeah,
I
tips on
think,
productivity.
yes, that would be, see, I feel that you should enjoy what you do. If you enjoy what you do, money will automatically come.
Hmm.
First is to enjoy what you do. But that doesn't mean that if you really want also money and enjoyment and everything, sometimes your passion could only be your hobby. For example, you may love pottery, but to get eke a living out of pottery is very difficult. You may love photography. To eke a living out of photography, you have to be absolutely passionate. It's not so easy. Any of the creative fields, to get make a living out of it is very difficult. So unless you are really very creative and brilliant, it's but if you're happy in what you do, then generally you can get what you want. But if you're running after money and all that,
Hmm.
it doesn't work. And second, one is, first you have to be happy in what you do. Secondly, you have to set aside time for your physical well-being.
Hmm. Hmm.
If you don't take care of yourself physically,
Hmm.
mentally you're not going to be alert to do anything else. I've known young people moving into diabetes at the age of 40 because they were so after making money, running work, etc.
Hmm.
You can't say, I'll make all my money and then I'll relax. Life doesn't work like that way. You can't work till 40 and then start relaxing at 45. Impossible. You have to set aside time for, it has to be, your life has to be well balanced.
Hmm.
Make sure your life is well balanced by what you eat, by what you do, and getting yourself a me time, even if you have children and things like that, especially
Yes.
for women.
Yes.
You should have some time set aside for yourself.
Right.
Sounds it and then if you have a balanced life, I think life would, the rest things will carry on. You'll even be able to handle if you don't have money.
Mm.
If you are running after only one thing in your life, then your rest of the other things are going to get take a hit. But if you have a well balanced life, you'll be
Mm.
able to handle everything and have confidence in yourself, and don't expect everything, very in a hurry.
Mm.
Everything comes only every profession comes with practice. Every skill comes with practice, whether it's cooking, clean, even a thing, simple thing like cooking comes with practice.
Yes.
So don't be in a hurry to get where reach where you are,
Mm.
because once you reach where you want to reach, after that the life will get very boring because you won't know where to go. I
Mm.
always feel sorry for people who achieve great things at a very young age, because there are no more challenges in their lives.
Right.
So having a challenge in your life, even if you have not fulfilled it, is very good, because then it has some motivation for you to go on.
Mm.
I think basically you need to be look after your health,
Mm-hmm.
set aside time for exercise and relaxation. If it's music, dancing, photography, reading, anything
Mm-hmm.
which you enjoy doing apart from what you work for a living.
Right.
I think that would be, set aside time for yourself and treat people as human beings, not as mere means. If
Yes.
you're working, if you're running and your company, then people who work with you are human beings. This reminds me of a philosopher who said, treat every rational human being as an end and never as mere means. This was, human beings are people in themselves. So if you are learning to treat people well, life goes on. I hope I've been helpful, because I'm not the real ideal pruner who's been
No,
rich
you
and
are.
with a lot of money. I'm a very happy person, basically.
I think that's what we want. I think happy people who are making a difference, I think that's what it is.
That I can say, because I still have a lot of my old students keeping in touch with me even after 30, 40
Yeah,
years.
see?
So that is good. Anyway,
Right. One last question.
yes.
Uh, what is your definition of success?
Being satisfied or being happy. My definition of success, um, see, money is important, recognition is also important.
Mm-hmm.
I would say 40% happiness, 30% recognition, and 30% money. All the three are required for success. You can't be successful,
Okay.
or let us even say 40 money. I mean, it could be any amount between money,
Right.
recognition, and
Happiness.
happiness or creativity. Creativity also will not, and money. So, money, recognition, and happiness.
Right.
Maybe one third each.
Wonderful.
I think all are important to be considered successful.
Right.
Money, recognition, and happiness.
Wonderful. Great. All right. So as we come to the end of the episode, just want to know like how can one reach out to you?
Oh, I, you can send me an email. My email address is lalita.murthy at
Mm-hmm.
gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
You can get in touch with me on the LinkedIn profile. My LinkedIn profile is public. It is no, even my Facebook profile is public. Anyone can get in touch with me. Um, Write an email,
All right.
then fine, and I always reply within 24 hours because this is what I teach. In business communication, you should reply emails within 24 hours of you getting it. Anyone sending me an email, I'll definitely reply within 24
Wonderful.
hours.
Great. So thank you so much again. I'll surely share these links in the episode description. But again, thank you for making time and sharing your story, the insights. And I think I think I have got a lot of key learnings for myself
Oh,
uh,
nice.
from your journey. So it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on my show. And thanks so much for agreeing to do this with me. Thank
Thank
you
you,
so much.
Shweta. Thank you. Good.
Yes, thank you.